All right, this video is part 2 of the Daniel 7:25 and the false Seventh-day Adventist chronology that they use for Daniel, particularly Daniel 7:25 as the papal supremacy of 538 to 1798 AD. Now, this video follows that one. That first video simply showed you why Daniel 7:25 is not the papacy, period, and it's not. Like I said in that video, what I'm going to follow that video with, which is this one, is, well, let's look at Daniel 7, not just Daniel 7:25. We're going to be better than Adventists. We're going to look at whole passages. And let's look and see what Daniel chapter 7 is teaching us. Now, the intent here of this video is to start to reverse some of the aversion I think some of you Seventh-day Adventists, former Seventh-day Adventists, may feel towards the book of Daniel, because I think it's been so abused. You've been so beat over the head by it. You've been so scared by it with all the big fluffy beasts and horns and this stuff. Would they over dramatize it? That I think there's an aversion with former Seventh-day Adventists even looking at the book of Daniel. Like, yeah, don't. Well, you know what? You can. I too had an aversion to Bible prophecy. You know why? Because it attracts the nuts, the crazies, or in a lot of cases the unbalanced, who get so focused on Bible prophecy. Now, I'm not talking about Adventists, I'm talking about in the Christian world, that they watch the news and they look for every little, and I know this happens in Adventism, every little news segment, and it's like, oh, this is the fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Let's look at Revelation, let's look at Daniel, let's look in, wherever. It's like, no, it's I've had my own aversion to it. Well, I've since come off that aversion, and now am studying Daniel, and will soon be studying Revelation with that. By the way, Seventh-day Adventists are completely unbalanced in their picture of Daniel 7. They love to, in their books, draw the scariest beast with big ugly horns and all this, and oceans and storms. It's dark and big waves. You know what? That's over dramatizing what is actually going on in Daniel 7. Adventists, you should not be focusing on the beast and making them scary, because you know what? The beast in Daniel 7 are an insult by God to us. It's not a compliment. It's an insult. It's a statement by God on the character of man. And well, I got more to say on that in just a minute here. I've been on a Daniel scholarly buying spree in the past several months. I have now somewhere in excess of 30 scholarly works on the book of Daniel, and you know what? And I'm buying a lot of them without even knowing what I'm buying. I'm just buying from reputable sets in some cases, like here's the Anchor Bible commentary set, or it could be the World Biblical Commentary, etc. set. Commentary sets which can cost $3,000, of which this is one volume in it, and etc. But almost half are liberal scholars. I am not going to tell you what the liberal scholars believe here in this video. I may in the next video that follows, which is going to be my recommendation for you former Seventh-day Adventists on a few scholarly works to get that I think will help you accurately understand Daniel. But what I want to do, though, is show you what does Daniel chapter 7 teach. Sorry, not sorry. It's going to be a long video. It's a very important chapter of the Bible. It's going to take some time. We're going to bounce forward from the library to the computer screen, from the library to the computer screen, several times. So we're going to start here in the library. Let's do an overview of the book of Daniel, and look with me here. Here is, I'm sorry, not the book, but just chapter 7. You can see chapter 7 is divided into 4 segments. 1 through 8, we're going to have the vision of the 4 beasts. Then God's going to judge those beasts. And then the Son of Man, after the beasts are judged, in comes the Son of Man, take his eternal kingdom. And that's the end of world history. The vision's complete. But you can see half of this chapter, Daniel 7:15 to 28, is where Daniel wants more information on the 4th beast. Daniel's not only going to get more information on the 4th beast that we've already seen in Daniel 7, 1 through 15, or 1 through 14, but he's going to get additional information that we didn't see in Daniel 7, 1 through 14. So 7:15 through 28 is largely a repeat of Daniel 7, 1 through 14, with some added information, and I'll point that out. That's really important. So look with me here. I am not going to discuss the liberals. No liberals here. Sorry. Because look at the statue on the left. Look what the liberals do in yellow. They take Medo and Persia and separate them. They make Greece the fourth kingdom. It's not Rome, it's Greece. More importantly, they say Daniel was written in 164 BC, and you know what they say? It's not by Daniel. In some cases, they say it's by pseudo-Daniel and many pseudo-Daniels, because Daniel chapter 7 is so prophetic and has been so correct that these liberal scholars said there's just no way that Daniel actually got this revelation. They actually deny the revelation from God. I am not going to respect them and give them a platform here. I'm going to stick with historical Christian interpretation of Daniel chapter 7, as you see in the statue on the right, which is Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and Daniel written about 553 BC. Daniel is writing very prophetically at the time he's writing. I'm just going to give you an example of one of these scholars. This book I just held up earlier. Here it is, the Book of Daniel in the Anchor Bible Commentary Series. This is a series, like I said, it's going to cost you about $2,000 if you want to buy a whole commentary series. By the way, never, ever, never buy a whole commentary series, because you're going to get knuckleheads like this in the series. Look what this guy says in Daniel chapter 7. But chapter 7, as will be shown, was clearly written even in its primary stratum during the persecution of Antiochus Epiphanes. See, this scholar here is looking at Daniel chapter 7 and going, no way, there's no way God told Daniel all these future kingdoms, and half of which weren't even fulfilled in Daniel's time. He's looking at this going, didn't happen. Actually, what these liberal scholars say, actually when you read commentaries on Daniel, they call them critical scholars. What the critical scholars say is the book of Daniel is writing history. It's not writing prophecy. So, like I said, about half my Daniel books are from these critical scholars, liberal scholars, and where's the trash bin? Now, some of them do bring up some other good points. I'll mention those perhaps in the next video. But in terms of understanding Daniel, they are of no help whatsoever. Matter of fact, it might be a help for you if I start to identify some of those liberal scholars, which I may do, like I said, in the next video. So this chapter of Daniel, Daniel chapter 7, is the final chapter in Daniel written in Aramaic. The vision depicts the role and character of the Gentile nations, right? Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, Gentile nations. These are, the beasts of Daniel 7 are the statue that you typically see, right? The gold, the silver, etc. From Daniel chapter 2. But here's the difference. Daniel chapter 2 is looking at the kingdoms, the Gentile kingdoms, from the point of view of man. Look at Nebuchadnezzar. He's what? The head of gold. And Nebuchadnezzar kind of like that. Yeah, I'm gold. Look at me. You know, I'm fancy Nebuchadnezzar. Well, what does God do by the time we get to Daniel chapter 7? He doesn't call him gold. He doesn't call him fancy. He calls him beast. Nebuchadnezzar is a beast. Alexander the Great's a beast. The Roman Empire is a beast. And same with the Medo-Persians and the Roman Empire to come. Cruel and wicked. That's how God sees the Gentile nations. That's why Seventh-day Adventists, when you love to portray the beast in the ocean and make it all scary, this is an insult from God to us. God is telling us, this is your character, this is how I see you. Beast. So, let's get that straight right off the top. Daniel chapter 7 is a very solemn time for the nation of Israel. Think about it. Look what happened to them. Their temple's destroyed. There are no sacrifices. Yes, we have a prophecy, for how long they're going to stay in captivity, but nothing's existing. They're a nation scattered. They're a nation that's not at home. And so what this vision of Daniel chapter 7 to Daniel, is God telling the nation of Israel through Daniel, hey, I am not done with you yet. You have a future, and that future is going to last until the end of all time. Let me show it to you. And that's what he does in Daniel chapter 7. Now, Daniel chapter 7 is, I want you to know what it's not. it skips the church age. The church age, when Christ ascended to heaven and the Christian church started, is nowhere to be found in Daniel chapter 7. You know why? Because it's not about us. Daniel chapter 7 is about the nation of Israel. I mean, that alone right there should tell you, when any Seventh-day Adventist sees themselves in Daniel chapter 7, you go, sorry, you're not there. And I'll show you some Aramaic later on, too, to prove that. So this Daniel 7 vision ends with the kingdom of the fourth beast, which is then judged by God. Once that fourth beast is judged by God, the Son of Man comes, meets the Ancient of Days, is given his eternal kingdom, and world history is over as we know it. That's just a real bird's eye view of the big pieces of Daniel right there. That's what Daniel chapter 7 is teaching you. Now, you're going to see, though, that this vision in Daniel chapter 7 will impact us. I mean us as in non-nation of Israel members, Gentiles, because we're going to see that later revelation is going to shed light on this former revelation. Now, there is a large gap of time we are living in right now from the fall of the historic Roman Empire, which we can say happened in the 5th century, to today. Because today we do not know who this 10 horns are that are going to rise up out of the ashes of the historic Roman Empire. We do not know who this one horn or one king is going to be, who is going to arise from the 10. We do not know when this one horn arises, the 3 kings that this one king is going to not exactly destroy, but he's going to beat them up. He's going to humiliate them, as you'll see in the Arabic. So there's things in the Aramaic. There's things we don't know at this point. So there's a large gap in time. So let's look here. I'm going to go quickly through the first part of Daniel. Here's Daniel 7, 1 through 8 in the vision of the beast. Now we have Daniel 7, 1, Belshazzar, king of Babylon. 4 great beasts came up out of the sea. That's 4 kingdoms. And the sea is just symbolism for mankind. We got 4 kingdoms coming out of the sea. So here we go. The first is like a lion. Well, we know that from Daniel 2 is Babylon. The second is like a bear. We know from Daniel 2 that's Medo-Persia. And the third is like a leopard. We know that again from Daniel 2 is Greece. And the fourth beast, terrifying, dreadful, exceedingly strong, etc., devoured, stomping with its feet. That's Rome. But here's what we don't know. Out of Rome is going to come, you see it here in verses 7 and 8, it's 10 horns. Out of the 10 horns is going to rise up another called a little horn, another kingdom. This has not happened yet. Out of historic Rome is going to rise a future Rome. Here's what scholars disagree on, and I'll probably say some of these things several times in the video, which is fine. Repetition is a great way for us to learn. Some scholars think the actual 10 horns, the 10 kingdoms that are going to arise out of the ashes of the historic Roman Empire, is symbolic. It's 10 as a number of completion, and that who knows what the number of kingdoms is going to be. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever. And they'd say the same with the 3. Others, me included, think 10 means 10, because 4 means 4. When I look at the statue, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, etc., it's 4. I mean, I see no compelling reason to switch from literal to symbolic interpretations at that point. So that's me. But you know what? If you want to say it that, I'm fine. Good Christian brothers and sisters can disagree on their interpretation of Daniel. And I'll have more to say that as we progress. But let me say this. So what you just read about the same 4 kingdoms in Daniel 2 and are now God's perspective of the same 4 kingdoms in Daniel 7. And they're not nice, they're beasts, and they're wicked. Most of the kingdoms we already know, right? Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, historic Rome that is. We don't know future Rome. In summary, we just saw the history of all the Gentile ruling kingdoms of the world. Some of which have occurred, some of which have not occurred. So here's what I want you to look at. Look at what's actually going on here. We're going to use the statue in this. The kingdoms, we go from gold down to clay and iron right at the bottom. We have a descending quality of governance. It's going to get worse. This is human history. Your governance by Gentile nations is going to get worse, and they are going to increase in their wickedness as time progresses. If you think we're just going to have world peace, you know what? Yeah, we may have a couple decades here and there of world peace, but generally speaking, if you're a Bible-believing Christian, there's going to be no such thing. It's going to be pure fantasy, because it's not going to happen. We have descending quality of governance with increasing wickedness is our future, as told to us by God, and that's what we're going to see until the end of time. So, these four kingdoms of Daniel 2 are nearly exact, like I said, to the ones in Daniel 7. However, the details, here's the difference. The 10 horns, the little horn, the 3 horns, that's new to Daniel 7, not in Daniel 2. But as we read Daniel, we just did Daniel 7, 1 through 8. We are on the earth and describing the 4 kings, the 4 beasts that are coming out of the earth. And all of a sudden, from Daniel 7, 8 to 9, we have a sudden switch. We now switch from the earth to something that's going to happen in the heavenly realm. We now move from Daniel 7, 1 through 8, which is the 4 beasts, or the statue that you see here on the right-hand side of the screen being described. We have a sudden, abrupt change from what is occurring in these kingdoms on earth, and then we go to heaven. Sudden change. Keep in mind, you just read Daniel 7, 8, which you can see here at the top of the screen. When this little horn, this mouth is speaking great things, we have, in this verse at least, some unspecified amount of time between Daniel 7 and 8. Which you're going to see later is the 3.5 years. Here, it's unspecified. The little horn is speaking great and blasphemous things, and then abruptly we go to Daniel 7, 9 through 12. Now we're in heaven. And it says in Daniel 7, 9, as I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair on his head was like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, its wheels like burning fire. Let's look at this again. Wheels of fire. You see wheels of fire. Well, actually, let's start at the beginning. As I looked, thrones were placed. See, it says thrones. That's plural. Scholars do not know how many thrones. We do know this, and this is where scholars are certain about. It's the Ancient of Days. That's God. Other thrones? Some scholars say it's Christ and the Father. Some say it's the saints and the Father. Some say it's angels and the Father. And others are mixtures of all 2 or 3 in between. So what we don't know is how many thrones. What we do know is that it's God took his seat. And we know it's God because it says his clothing was white as snow, his hair on his head was pure like pure wool. These are all allusions to the purity and holiness that is the Father. His throne was fiery flames. Fire symbolizes God. I only put just a couple of scripture verses there. There's more, by the way. So his throne is fiery flames. That always symbolizes God. You can go back to, I didn't even put it here, Exodus 3, when God comes down in the form of the burning bush and talks to Moses. Fire is God. Look at this last part here. Its wheels were burning fire. God has a throne with wheels, and they're burning fire. Well, we know fire is God. Wheels. Why does God's throne have wheels? Why? Because wheels convey, as you see here, mobility and presence, omniscience, presence everywhere all the time. God's throne, in other words, when God is judging, God can do this in a mobile sense, anywhere at all times is what this means. Let's move on to Daniel. Oh, by the way, here's the order of events. So we start with Daniel 7:8. We got the little horn being revealed, who begins speaking great things, great heretical things. And then we switch to the scene in heaven, which you're going to see later is going to be 3.5 years. Or you can look at Daniel 9, where it's 3.5 years. And then, so the little horn is the Antichrist is revealed, speaking great things, and then judgment begins in heaven. So I know Seventh-day Adventists love to try to poke evangelical Christians in the eye with their so-called secret rapture. Well, you know what? I don't see a secret rapture here. Okay? I don't believe in a secret rapture. I do not believe we're going to be walking down the street tomorrow and then all of a sudden everybody's going to get taken up into heaven like you see in this picture here before you. Sorry, it doesn't happen like that. Just read the text. What's the text say? Antichrist is revealed. The little horn, who begins speaking heretical things. Thrones are placed in heaven and this beast is going to get judged. So there's an order of events. So secret rapture, yes, I know there are some that believe it and I disagree with them believe that. I believe that we're going to know. Now, whether the rapture is in the middle of this tribulation, this 3.5-year period, or at the end of it, there's speculation there. You know what? And good Christian brothers and sisters can speculate on this. Let's continue reading. Daniel 7:10. A stream of fire. Now, this is still the judgment scene. Issued and came out from before him. 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. Again, fire indicates the presence of God. And like I said, I think the previous one, there's Exodus right there. So a stream of fire came out from before him. This is the throne room of God, where there's fire, where there's judgment. And 1,000,000 served him. 10,000 times 10,000 served him. That's not a literal number, by the way. That is meant to say those that are not which countable serves him. He has innumerable servants. But it does make the point that we saw here in verse 9. The court sat in judgment. The books were opened. This beast is going to get judged. Verse 11, and I looked then because of the sound of the great words that little horn was speaking. As I looked, what happened? The beast got judged now, because it says what? As I looked, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed, and given over to be burned with fire. That's Revelation 19:20. The beast was what? Captured with his false prophet, who in its presence had done the signs by which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast and those who worshiped its image. They were thrown alive into the lake of fire that burns with sulfur. So the beast is utterly destroyed. By the way, this appears again later in Daniel 7:25 about the beast. And of course, we know Adventism interprets Daniel chapter 7 completely wrong. It says it's the papacy. If it was the papacy, just read Daniel 7:11 again, because the beast was killed, destroyed, burned, does not exist. And I'll show you again from the Aramaic. To be destroyed means to be completely annihilated. That's how we know it's not the papacy. Because, well, get on an airplane and go to Vatican City today and go shake hands with the Pope. Either your interpretation of Daniel 7:11 is wrong, or this word of God here, Daniel 7:11, is wrong. Sorry, Adventists. Daniel 7 is true. Your interpretation is wrong. It is not the papacy. Daniel 7:12. As for the rest of the beasts, the remaining three, that is, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged. How long? We don't know. It says for a season. But the beast is completely destroyed. And then what happens after that? This beast is in, again, remember the order of events. When the beast is destroyed, enter the Son of Man onto the scene. So now we see Daniel 7:9 through 12. God judges the beast. Daniel 7:13 and 14. In the next order of events is the kingdom is given to the Son. Let's look at Daniel 7:13 and 14. Daniel 7:13. I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. He came to the Ancient of Days and was presented to him. Pay attention to these words for me with me here. The night visions, behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like the Son of Man. Look in the middle here, Son of Man. This is Jesus' most frequent way he referred to himself. And in the ancient Near East, it was thought of that God rides on the clouds of heaven. Just look at the bottom of the screen here in Psalm 104, verses 1 through 3, and you can see the end of it there. This is God, makes the clouds his chariot. He rides on the wings of the wind. God is the cloud rider. But what's it say here in Daniel 7:13? The Son of Man is coming on the clouds. And the conclusion is what? The Son of Man is none other than God. Period. This is absolutely phenomenal. Keep that in mind. We're now going to jump to the New Testament. We're going to go to the trial of Christ, where Caiaphas, the high priest, Jesus has been seized. He has stood up before the council, and the high priest stood up and said, have you no answer to make? He says this to Christ. What is it that these men testify against you? But Jesus remained silent, as the high priest said to him, I adjure thee by the living God. Pay attention to those words right there. I adjure thee by the living God. That is the high priest putting Jesus under oath in a court of law to tell the truth. In America, we hold up our right hand and say, I swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. That's the same kind of thing that's being done here. It's a sworn testimony to say, tell the truth, because if you don't, you're a liar. And we know Christ is not a liar. And then he says, after puts him on sworn oath, he says, tell us if you're the Christ, the Son of God. And Jesus said to him, you have said it so. But I tell you,
from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. You see what Jesus just did there? Jesus in Matthew 26 just quoted Daniel 7:13, which they knew in ancient parlance in their times. God is the one who rides on clouds. Jesus just called himself God. Because you see what the high priest did here in verse 65. It says he's uttered blasphemy. What other witnesses do we need? You now have heard this blasphemy. The high priest knows his Old Testament. He knew Daniel. He knew Daniel says there's going to be one coming like the Son of Man. And cloud riders in that time were God. All right, what happens next? Daniel 7:14. And to him was given dominion, this is the Son of Man, and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom is one that shall not be destroyed. Recap here. Remember, we have the 10 kingdoms, and out of the 10 kingdoms is going to arise one that's going to be a little horn, a little kingdom who's going to humiliate 3 of those kingdoms and is going to get judged by God, destroyed by God, and after that, here it is, Daniel 7:14, the everlasting kingdom of Christ. What is everlasting? Here's that same Aramaic lexicon I used in the previous video. Here's the same slide I used in the previous video in case you didn't watch it and you're an Adventist and you say, I can't trust this lexicon. Sure you can, because your own Biblical Research Institute and Ministry Magazine does so too. So we can trust it too. What's it say about Daniel 7:14 and everlasting? It's the ever-living one. Ever-living one. Who's that? That is none other than Christ himself.
Okay, that's it. The world history from Babylon to the eternal kingdom of Christ has just been given to us in 14 verses in Daniel. That's it. Now the other 14 is going to be largely a repeat of what you just saw in verses 1 through 14. But again, like I said earlier, added information. What we still don't know, what we don't know in our world is, who is this little horn? Who are these 10 kingdoms that are going to arise out of the ashes of the historic Roman Empire? Who's the little horn going to be? Who's the little horn going to humiliate, fight, take over, and rule? And then going to get judged by God, destroyed forever by God. And the Son of Man enters the scene, is presented to the Ancient of Days, who is given the kingdom forever. That's world history. Again, it's done. But Daniel 7:15 to 28, half of this chapter is Daniel very concerned with the cruelty of this fourth beast and asks, it says, those standing next to him, whoever those are. And that, again, scholars have differing opinions on those standing next to him when Daniel is asking. Angel Gabriel, another angel, God. Scholars differ. But he's talking to a divine, some type of divine being, not human, I guess I could say more accurately, who's going to tell him more information about the fourth beast that we don't already know. Let's watch here.
Now we know the vision's complete. That's it. Daniel 7, 1 through 14. You've just seen, as you heard me say, this is the end of the world. This is the beginning of time, starting with the gold head of Babylon and ending with the eternal kingdom of Christ. And we just saw everything in between of that. Well, let me say mostly everything. So we go from Daniel 15 through 18, and let's look at this here. Daniel was distressed because that fourth beast was pretty troubling to him. So he came near one of those who stood by. And some people are thinking that perhaps it's the angel. It's the angel Gabriel, or it's another angel. It just doesn't say. Just read the text. And I came near one of those who stood by. Doesn't tell us. So anything we have to say is speculation about who it is. And asked him the truth of all these things. So he told me, and he made known the meaning of the things. These 4 great beasts are what? 4 kings. They're going to arise out of the earth. You know, I think, like I said earlier, Adventists go way too much drama here. They make a whole big to-do about scary big oceans and the big beast, and you know what? The angel just interpreted them for us here. Or whoever it was that stood near him in 16. Hey, the 4 beasts, they're 4 kings. And they arise out of the sea of humanity, the ocean. And that's really an allusion back to Daniel 7:3. 7:18. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever. This one verse now has summarized these two previous ones that we looked at. But we get new information here in Daniel's concern and explanation and interpretation that he's getting from the being that's standing next to him. Because look in Daniel 7:19 when the beast is described, the fourth beast. The fourth beast was most terrifying, and Daniel wanted more information on it, and he got it, and here it is. And it describes this fourth beast with, and here's what's new, claws of bronze. And about the little horn, it's not called little here now. It says it seems greater than its companion. So there's a change now in this little horn. It's not so little. And that this little horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them. That wasn't there before either. But then he says, until the Ancient of Days came, we saw that judgment earlier, and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High. So who is this terrible fourth beast of iron that devours and breaks into pieces and stamps what's left with his feet? It's Rome. We know that because all the other kings came one kingdom in succession right after another, and now we have historical Rome. Daniel 7:19. Daniel said, I want to know the truth about this fourth beast, because hey, in Daniel's time there was no Roman Empire, which was different about them. And the Roman legions, these guys of this picture that you see here, were absolutely brutal. And they did what Daniel 7:19 said. Not only did they break it, but they went back and stomped it. It shows their brutality. Remember the image I showed earlier. What can we expect from history? We can expect decreasing quality of governance and increasing wickedness from those same governance. And we have it right here. Now we continue reading. Now we have a time gap because we have historical Rome at 7:19. We don't have the 10 horns. We don't have the little horn. We don't have the scene that you just saw where the Ancient of Days comes, sets a court in judgment, and the beast is destroyed, and the kingdom of heaven, the Son of Man, Christ, is given forever and ever. None of that I just said has happened. That's the future. So we have a time gap right now between historic Rome and revived Rome. Let me say this about the 10 kingdoms. I kind of said it earlier, but I didn't say it in quite enough detail. In prophecy here, we're told there's going to be 10 horns, or 10 kings. Not all evangelical Christian scholars believe it's going to be 10 kingdoms. Some do. Matter of fact, quite a lot do. Remember what I said earlier, too. I'm not quoting any liberals. I'm leaving the liberals out of this. They're not even worthy of discussion from... That's it. I've already said enough about liberals. So the 10 horns are 10 kings. And a lot of evangelical scholars believe it's really literally going to be a kingdom of 10 kingdoms that are going to arise out of the ashes of this historic Roman Empire. Now, there are other Christian scholars that say, no, I don't think it's going to be 10 kingdoms. I think 10 is a number used in the Bible symbolic of completeness. It could be 8 kingdoms. It could be 16 kingdoms. It could be 12 kingdoms. Whatever the number is, they say that God would determine to be complete would be the 10 horns, the number of completeness. I tend to think 10 means 10 because, well, I go back to the statue and Daniel too, because 4 means 4. I mean, there were 4 kingdoms. It's not symbolic. We know who the 4 kingdoms are. So I personally don't see any reason to switch from literal to symbolic midstream. However, I recognize that I can disagree with them, and they recognize they can disagree with me. If you want to call it a symbol of completeness, I'm fine with that. We can do that because there's just some things that we do know and some things we don't know, and that's what we don't know. We don't know who the 10 kingdoms are. We don't know who the 3 that are going to get humiliated by this by the one horn that's going to rise up from this 10 kingdom confederation and etc. and kick everything off into the future. Daniel 7:24. As for the 10 horns out of this kingdom, it says what? 10 shall arise, and another's going to rise after them, and he shall be different. That's the little horn, and he's going to put down 3 kings. What does that mean? That means, I went to the Aramaic on this, he's going to humiliate 3 of them. And it's reasoned by the Christian scholars that once this little horn, which you just saw when Daniel asked his companion there who's given him the vision about the little horn. They no longer called it little because it was greater. That this little horn is going to gain so much power, it's going to overthrow 3 of the kings. The other 7 are just going to throw their hands up and say, okay, you showed us, we're in with you now. And that's it. Once he does that, then he just takes over power from them. So that's what the word for overcome, humiliate, etc. means there in Daniel 7:24. Daniel 7:25, right? Already been refuted in the previous video. It's not the papacy. Obviously, just keep reading the verse because one verse follows another in this whole scene here. And this little horn is going to speak what? Words against the Most High. He's going to wear out the saints of the Most High. He's going to think to change times and law, and they shall be given into his hand for a times and a half. So what does it mean to wear out the saints? Who are the saints, by the way? Look in Aramaic. It means what? I just read you the verse here in Daniel 7:25, which you can see here. The saints is Israel. You know what? It's not me and it's not you. This is a vision given to the nation of Israel, given to the Jew. Now we know by later revelation that we're going to be impacted here. I'll show you that in a minute. But keeping this revelation true, we're not in it. And by the way, everything I've said thus far, remember, the church age isn't here. We got Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and then we jump to the end of the world. What happened after Christ ascended? It's the Christian church. That whole age is missing here. So not only is it important to know what's in this vision of Daniel, it's important to know what's not in this vision of Daniel. And it's you and I. But through later revelation, that given to the Apostle John, we know how we fit into it. But it's only after the fact. Revelation 13:1 is that same beast with the 10 horns that we just read about in Daniel chapter 7. And then it says what about that beast? It was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. Well, by this time in Revelation, we know this is the Christian era. So this is not just Jew, this is Jew and Gentile. So in Daniel, we don't know that the Gentiles are. We know it by later revelation right here that Jew and Gentile are going to be facing this little horn, this Antichrist, who's going to be allowed to make war on the saints. And then it says also what? In the next part of the verse. And he's going what? He shall think to change times and law. What is law, by the way? Well, let's look at the Aramaic for law. There's 725, and the Aramaic was, we look at the top piece here, the law of God of heaven. That's to say the God that's worshipped. Now, again, this is where Seventh-day Adventist error. They said, oh, it's a Roman Catholic Church, and they changed the Sabbath. That's one law. This word is the law of God. And depending on however you want to count them, there's over 600 of them. So this beast is going to think to change times and law meaning the law of God, not just the Sabbath, which is a single law. Adventists are just, they can't get the book of Daniel right. There's such bad exegetes in the book of Daniel. But let's look at it a different way now. Look what it says. It says, and shall think to change times and law. It doesn't say will. He shall think to. And some translations say intends to change times and law. So it's not even a done deal. It's not a fact that this beast is going to change anything, because he says he shall think. I like what I read by one Christian scholar, and this is what he said, and I found it very interesting. You think the Antichrist is stupid? He knows Scripture. So when it says he shall think to change times and laws, he knows his judgment time is coming. He knows God, the Ancient of Days, is going to throw down the thrones, as we already saw, and open up the books and judge this beast. And this is what one commentator says, this is what he thinks the Antichrist wants to try to change in terms of times, which is his times, and law, which is that's already been written about him. Of course, he shall think to do it. He doesn't do it. So I thought that was a pretty interesting take on what this means. But it says shall think. It doesn't say he did. Verse 26. Because after this, and he's been shall think of changing times and law, and the saints are going to given into his hand for a time. That's 3.5 years. So there's our time period. But the court sat in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away to be consumed and destroyed to the end. The beast now is judged and destroyed, consumed and destroyed. Let's see what Daniel 7:26 in Aramaic means. So to slay the beast means just exactly what you think it means. Kill, slay, as you see here at the bottom of the page. But it says slayed or killed for how long? Forever. And here's the Aramaic word for that. And that means to what? Destroy it and annihilate it. I mean, it no longer exists. Again, like I said, papacy exists today. Get on a plane, go to Vatican City, go shake hands with the Pope. So we know Daniel 7:25 is not the papacy. We know from this, an accurate understanding, Daniel 7:25 has not happened yet, and neither has Daniel 7:26 that we see here before us. So Daniel 7:27, when the beast is destroyed, what happens next? Well, we've already seen this, but this is just a repeat of what we've already seen. This guide, this angel is telling Daniel, and the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve him. We didn't get that. See, here's that same text about the judgment that God, as the Ancient of Days, is and giving the kingdom to his son, the Son of Man. But notice what it says here in 7:27. The kingdom's given to who? People of the saints of the Most High. It doesn't quite say it like that in Daniel 7 and 13 and 14. It says, given that peoples and nations and languages should serve him. But now it's more specific. This is the people of the saints of the Most High. And this kingdom lasts how long? This kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. And so what does everlasting mean? Well, everlasting is given, in terms of the kingdom, is given to the ever-living one. So this kingdom is everlasting by the ever-living one. And again, this also hasn't happened yet in history.
All right, you just saw in Daniel 7:19 to 28 what has already happened in history. I mean, except for the historic Roman Empire piece, which we know has already happened. There's aspects of that Roman Empire that have not happened yet, and that's what we're waiting for. Now, Seventh-day Adventism they are so locked into history, which doesn't exist to support their false view of Daniel 7:25. Here's what Adventism does. They teach, the Reformers taught that the beast was the papacy, and this concept of a future Antichrist and the 3.5-year tribulation, that's a creation of the Roman system during the Reformation. And Adventists believe, of course, because they say the papacy is the beast, and whenever I challenge Adventists online about this, I say, really, and you get that from where? And they go, well, the Reformers believed it. like they're the Bible, they're Spirit of Prophecy version 2 for them. So the SDA's act, in their literature, that is, like the beginning of Christian history is the Reformation. They seem to forget that we got 1,500 years of history before that. Adventists cite Protestants as departing from the Reformers. Protestants of today, that is, departing from the Reformers, if you don't cite the papacy as the beast. And, oh my word, you have to cite the papacy as the beast because, Martin Luther and everybody else did. No, we don't. What the SDA don't realize is that theology goes back further than the 1500s. What the SDAs don't realize, it's the Reformers who broke away from the historic Christian understanding of Daniel. And that's what I'm going to show you next. But before I do, we're going to look at the Adventist magazine, right here, Ministry Magazine, November of 1942, page 36, this section, and the Adventists tell us what? Here it is, the misconception of Antichrist. The dispensationalist has reversed the historic Protestant position. No, it's not the historic Protestant position, as you're going to see. And then they go on to say, and is teaching error that is invented by the doctors of the Roman Catholic Church in order to combat the Reformation. Again, you're going to see that's false. Let's keep reading. Protestantism pointed the finger of prophecy at the papacy. But Rome declared that the Antichrist was a man yet to come. So that's, remember, now read that again. That's a Roman Catholic invention, according to Adventism. The Rome was a man yet to come and would rule for 3.5 years in this future tribulation period. Is that statement true? What you just read in that paragraph, true by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, was the future Antichrist an invention of the 1500s papal system? We're going to look at two Daniel commentaries, which just refute what you just read in that Ministry magazine. Both magazines, both scholars, in terms of Daniel, were completed before any papal supremacy, according to Seventh-day Adventist theology, was even invented, which is what? Beginning in 538 AD. we're going to look at a Daniel commentary from 230 AD and another one from the 300s AD. And you know what? Both of them talk about a future Antichrist and 3.5 year tribulation. Wow, they seem to have missed the memo from the 1500s. I guess the papal system needed to go back to the future and travel back in time and tell these two scholars, sorry. No, see, that's why the Reformation departed from the historic Christian understanding. We're going to start with an extraordinarily early commentary on the book of Daniel. We don't have all the commentary. Some of it's lost. What we do have, you're going to see by a commentator named Hippolytus, who wrote a commentary on Daniel in 230 AD, before a Roman Empire even existed.
All right, now we get to test what you just read in that previous magazine, where the future Antichrist and times and a half to 3.5 years, that's an invention of the papal Roman system. Well, that's going to be news here to our scholar that we see in front of us, who wrote a commentary of Daniel. We do not have the entire commentary. We do have fragments of it, and I'm going to show you some of those fragments. Look at when he lived. Saint Hippolytus of Rome, 170 to 235 AD. This is really, really early. And a commentary on Rome written about 230 AD, like I said, of which fragments exist and which we will look at here. And the first fragment for his comment on Daniel 7:7 is this: "And behold, a fourth beast, now that there has arisen no other kingdom after the Greeks." See how early this is? The Roman Empire doesn't even exist yet. But this Christian scholar can discern by reading Daniel 7, there's going to be a kingdom that's going to follow Greece. Don't know who it is, but there's going to be one. And then he goes on to say, when he's talking about that kingdom, and when it does appear, he understands that this little horn, which is Antichrist, is going to appear from this yet to be defined fourth kingdom. Wait, didn't I just read that it was the 1500s Reformation era papal system that developed this whole future yet to be appeared Antichrist? Well, apparently Hippolytus in 230 AD didn't get the SDA memo that he should have to wait about another 1300 years before he made such statement. See how here we are right now. We've already proven Adventist history is simply not to be trusted. Adventism is just wrong. But let's continue reading, because we're going to see how just wrong they are. Then Hippolytus goes on to talk in Daniel 7:17 about which shall arise. For when the three beasts have finished their course and been removed, then one stands in vigor. When this one is removed, then finally earthly things shall end and heavenly things begin. He recognizes, remember, we already looked at, the Ancient of Days is going to judge the little horn, the beast, going to get destroyed and annihilated forever. And then immediately after that, what happens? The kingdom is given to the Son of Man, to Christ, and that kingdom is going to last forever and ever and ever. That's what Hippolytus understood in 230 AD, what we just read. And continue. This future Antichrist is going to come from these 10 horns, or the 10 kingdoms. His comment on Daniel 7:19, and from which also 10 horns are to spring. See, he knows this is going to happen in the future, whoever this fourth kingdom is going to be, because he's living in the kingdom of the Greeks, and they're going to be appointed 10 crowns. And among those, a little one's going to arise, and that's the Antichrist. And he's going to do this for how long? 3.5 years. See, I'm sorry, Adventist, your whole idea of painting this papal system and how they created a future Antichrist and a 3.5 year tribulation, it's done during the Reformation. We just saw an account of Daniel from 230 AD that just proves this whole Adventist understanding completely wrong.
You have now seen an accurate interpretation of the book of Daniel in 230 AD. In 230 AD, when Seventh-day Adventist said that kind of thing was invented in the 1500s. Once again, history defeats Adventism. Here it is in 230 AD, a future Antichrist, etc. So, does this mean that this Christian scholar Hippolytus of Rome was a dispensationalist, following Darby in the 1800s and under papal direction, which according to Adventism didn't start until 538 AD? Yeah, right. Again, that's why Seventh-day Adventists and their Bible understanding are not to be trusted. And this video here demonstrates that mistrust. Newsflash, the papal Rome and superiority in 230 AD didn't exist. Papal Rome didn't exist. This Adventist dispensational boogeyman that they like to always bring up has just been refuted in this video. Period. If there are, here's the sad part. If there are any if the Seventh-day Adventist religion exists, when the Antichrist is finally revealed, as Daniel 7 says, and the Seventh-day Adventists who already believe the Antichrist has been revealed and is the Roman Catholic Church, they will not recognize the real Antichrist when he shows up. That's scary for them. I'm scared for you, for your unbelief in the Bible. So in Adventism, the papacy is the Antichrist. Let me just show you this here, just so we know we're on the same sheet of music, per se. Here's Elder J.N. Andrews. Let me just say anti-Christian, anti-Trinitarian, died as an anti-Trinitarian, non-Christian J.N. Andrews. Says this in this magazine, and they're actually copying something from his. In 1942, this great Antichrist is the papal power. Of this there can be no doubt. And you can see I got other similar quotes from 1868, 1873, 1938, etc. The SDA doctrines are set in stone, pun intended. Our SDAs are just completely ignorant of modern scholarship. Another example, another video, the Didache. It's a manual on how the early church in the first century operated. And you know what we didn't discover that until the 1880s. And it got published in the way late 1880s. And you know what chapter 14 of the Didache says? They were worshiping on the Lord's Day. Uh-oh, I thought the Sabbath changed in 321 or 538, pick your date. But we see that Christian church is already celebrating on Sunday in the first century. See what modern archaeology refutes Adventism? Same thing's going to happen here. In the 300s, Jerome wrote a verse-by-verse commentary on Daniel. First translated into English in 1958. Here is that book. 1958, which you're going to see photographs of it here. Here's the 1958 edition. First time commentary on Daniel is put into print in the English language, and we can read what a Christian said about Daniel in roughly AD. We can say 379 to 420. Look here on Jerome. This is who we have here that's doing this commentary for us. Jerome, by the way, didn't believe the papacy was the beast. He didn't believe in a day for a year. He believed in a future Antichrist, etc. But yet he wrote this commentary on the book of Daniel. Let's look at what he wrote in this very book. And again, remember what the Adventists said. The idea of a future Antichrist is a papal invention in the 1500s, as well as a 3.5-year tribulation. Jerome is going to once again help us prove Seventh-day Adventists don't know their history.
So here's the exact book that I just held up. And you can see, first edition, 1958. This is the 1958 edition, the very first time Jerome's commentary on Daniel was put in print for everybody to believe. See how dangerous it is, Adventists, when you base your theology and you are cast in stone 200 years ago, and now we got something in 1958 going to show up and refute you. Let's see what Jerome said in the 300s on the commentary of Daniel. Look what he says here about verse 8. He says this: "We should therefore concur with the traditional interpretation of all the commentators of the Christian church that at the end of the world, when the Roman Empire is destroyed." He's talking about a future Antichrist. He knows that the fourth beast is coming. By the way, my notes here, if you were to look at my sloppy writing at the top here, written to refute Porphyry. Porphyry was a contemporary of Jerome, and he wrote much like our liberal scholars today. Porphyry did not believe Daniel wrote Daniel. He said, there's no way that this book of Daniel could have been written by a guy named Daniel because there's so many outstanding in a good way, prophecies in this book that have come true and will likely come true. There's just no way that this has got to be written by somebody else, and it's probably written after the fact. So he's writing about Antiochus Epiphanes, etc. This whole theme, from the 300s, gets picked up again in the 1800s by our liberal scholars. Jerome is actually refuting the liberal scholar of his day, accurately interpreting Scripture, talking to us about a future rise of a Roman Empire that's going to usher in the end of the world. Let's see what else he says here. Verses 25. And the Antichrist is going to wage war on the saints. Jerome is telling us in his commentary what he knows is going to happen in the future. There's going to be a future Antichrist who's going to wage war on the saints. And then he goes on to tell us that this is going to last for how long in verse 25? And he goes here, times is 1 year, times is 2 years, and the half is 6 months. That's 3.5 years. So here's Jerome, before what Adventists thought never existed, because in Adventist theology, theology starts at the Reformation. Well, you know what? Theology started with Hippolytus and Jerome in the 200s and the 300s. It was the Reformers who deviated from the historical interpretation of Daniel, and it's the Adventists who followed the Reformers in their deviation. Jerome got it right. This Jerome commentary, by the way, reads so much like the current commentaries. The only difference is we know much more about Daniel now. And the current commentaries have added a lot, Book of Enoch, etc., and their relationships. But in all the big overarching themes and topics of this, what Jerome had in the 300s and Hippolytus had in the 200s is what we have today. Unfortunately, Adventists, you are with a wrong interpretation. And here's a book first printed in 1958. Utterly refutes the Adventist notion of dispensationalism. I guess Daniel didn't get the memo from Darby in the 1800s, right? About a future Antichrist, 3.5 years, etc.
All right, now we have a 2nd century commentary by Hippolytus of Rome and a 3rd century commentary by Jerome contradicting what Adventists said, which is what, 1500s? The Antichrist was developed by Catholic doctors? No, that was the historic Christian faith. Yes, the Reformers were wrong. They're the ones that broke away from Hippolytus and Jerome, and there's probably others that I don't even know about and haven't found out about yet. But it's the Reformers who broke away from the historic Christian faith. But the point is, the Adventists appeal to the Reformers. They are completely ignorant of the Christian history that exists before the Reformers. See, in Adventism, it's like theology starts in the 1500s. Hello, try 300. If additionally, the 30 plus now scholarly commentaries that I have on Daniel, with the earliest being the Hippolytus one, which you saw on screen. I got another one from 2020 by a guy named Paul Tanner, which is a fantastic commentary. Not a single one acknowledges any point of the SDA chronology with any credibility. It's just completely ignored. As a matter of fact, if it is there, then it's ridiculed in some cases. For example, I got a 1940 commentary by Lewis Talbot. 1940. 10 plus years before Walter Martin even became on the scenes. And you know what I read in that 1940 commentary? I read something about a cult called Seventh-day Adventism and how they inaccurately interpret Daniel chapter 8. A cult, 1940. Lewis Talbot. No one acknowledges the SDA are correct in any aspect of their significant aspect of their Daniel revelation. This video has given you an accurate understanding of Daniel chapter 7. I hope I've showed at least some of the areas in which scholars have differing opinions, and in some areas in which, no, there's like unanimous agreement. The gold, the first beast, Babylon. I mean, you know, there's unanimous agreement. We do know the SDAs are wrong. We do know that Daniel 7:25 is not the papacy. Just read Daniel 7:26. Daniel 7:25 is the beast getting destroyed forever. And then what happens? Destroyed forever. Thrown into the lake of fire. Sorry, the papacy still exists. Hasn't got destroyed forever yet. An accurate understanding, actually I think an accurate understanding of Daniel chapter 7 is actually very exhilarating. Because you are just reading the history of the world. And we're living, we can look back and see what has occurred. We can look and say this is what's going to happen. And remember what I said when I showed you the statue and the descending quality of governance with the increasing amount of wickedness from our governments. Are you living that now? I am. You probably are too. We're seeing increased wickedness of our governments and kind of an undoing of all that is is good. We're living Daniel chapter 7 right now. So that's all we have. We got laid out before us world history. And I think it's exhilarating. And have an accurate understanding of it is absolutely beneficial. That's why I'm going to follow this video with recommendations of several commentaries that I want you to buy, because I want you to study Daniel chapter 7 and get an accurate understanding of it and flush out all this silly Adventist nonsense that's been pounded into your head if you're a former Adventist. Or if you're not a former Adventist like me, you're just kind of shying away from Bible prophecy, maybe for some of the same reasons I did, because it attracts the crazies and the nutters or the unbalanced, and say, let's do this in a balanced format. Revelation 22:20 is this: He who testifies to these things says, surely I am coming soon. Amen. Come, Lord Jesus. That's what we learned in Daniel chapter 7. He is coming soon. Here is the chart again. Great controversy, page 328, 329. Going down in flames. The papacy set up in 538, ending in 1798 as the Daniel 7:25 prophetic event on the Seventh-day Adventist chart has gone down in flames. It is an epic fail. And once again, the wrecking ball, that is the Word of God, destroys the Adventist understanding of this whole 538, 1798, Daniel 7:25 nonsense. For the Word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing the division of soul, spirits, and joints and marrow, and discerning the thoughts and intentions of the heart. The Word of God alone destroys the false Adventist chronology.